When you look out into nature, it's easy to focus on the individual. A single deer grazing in the woods feels like a self-contained story, an animal existing completely alone in its environment. But in biology, true isolation doesn't actually exist. That single deer is just one member of a larger population, a group of the exact same species living and breeding in this specific area. And that population doesn't live in a vacuum. It shares this physical space with dozens of entirely different species. The birds overhead, the insects in the soil, the oak trees providing cover. Together, they form a biological community. Zoom out one more step and include the non-living elements they all rely on, the mineral composition of the soil, the flow of the groundwater, the sunlight hitting the canopy, and you get the complete ecosystem. An ecosystem operates as a single functional unit. Survival here isn't an individual achievement, it's a collective necessity, where every living and non-living component is forced to interact just to stay alive. So if all these distinct species are bound together, what exactly is the physical thread connecting them? It comes down to a constant, vital flow of energy. You can think of it as the currency that funds all biological activity, from a plant growing a leaf to a predator hunting its prey. For nearly all ecosystems on Earth, that currency is minted in exactly the same place, the sun. An ecosystem functions as a giant solar-powered engine designed to transfer life force from one entity to the next. It starts at the base level with producers. These are your green plants and phytoplankton. They pull in raw solar energy and synthesize it, storing it as a usable form of physical biomass. But animals can't photosynthesize. To acquire this stored energy, primary consumers, the herbivores, have to take it by force, consuming the producers to extract their biological fuel. That energy keeps moving up. Herbivores are eaten by secondary and tertiary consumers, the carnivores and top predators, creating a linear transfer of power from the sun to a plant to a deer to a wolf. In reality, it rarely stays a simple straight line. A wolf eats a deer, but it also eats a rabbit, which eats a dozen different plants. That single chain quickly branches out into a dense, heavily intertwined food web. At first glance, a food web looks chaotic, but the size and shape of this entire structure is governed by an invisible mathematical limitation. Ecologists call it the 10% rule. Energy transfer in nature is incredibly inefficient. Every time one organism eats another, about 90% of the energy is lost to the environment as body heat and basic metabolic function. So if we start with 10,000 units of solar energy captured by our plants, the herbivores that eat them only absorb 10% of that, leaving just 1,000 units of usable energy. Move up another step to the carnivores, and that loss compounds. The 1,000 units drop to just 100 units of energy available for the next tier. By the time we reach the apex predators at the very top of the food chain, they are surviving on an absolute fraction, mere scraps of what the plants originally captured. This mathematical decay explains a harsh biological reality. It's why food chains rarely exceed 4 or 5 levels, and why a habitat needs millions of plants and thousands of herbivores just to keep a handful of top predators alive. Because predators are kept so artificially rare by this energy limit, the few that do exist carry a disproportionately massive weight. They dictate the stability of the entire system beneath them. Ecologists call these keystone predators. Take the Pysasters starfish in rocky tidal zones. By constantly hunting mussels and barnacles, the starfish keeps those highly aggressive prey species in check. If you remove that single starfish, you trigger a trophic cascade. Without the predator, the mussel population immediately explodes, consuming all available space and resources. Deleting a predator doesn't save the prey underneath it. It destroys the biodiversity of the entire habitat by allowing a single dominant competitor to crowd everything else out. This reframes nature as a mathematically structured tapestry, where the stability of the entire community relies on a precise and fragile balance of energy. Because energy is so strictly limited by the 10% rule, every single species in the web acts as a load-bearing pillar for the energy flow of the whole community. The interdependence is absolute. When you pull out just one thread, the tension shifts, the energy stalls, and the entire ecosystem begins to unravel.